Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people.
Which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you, and we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara Riska, life coach, wife, and the mother of 4 incredible and unique kids. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I completely lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and grace that once felt so completely lacking. I started the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves up against what feels impossible. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle the dreams that you hold impossible now. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you're a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hey, welcome back to the Special Needs Mom podcast. You are in for a treat today. You're going to get so much value from the conversation that Jeannie and I had. Today's guest is Jeannie Schnur. I guess I should mention who my guest is. And she's going to tell you all about who she is in the episode. And I'll say that who she is as a mom is incredible. She's absolutely incredible. She and I actually met as a result of this podcast. Funny story. You know how I say on the podcast, hey, reach out. I'd love to connect with you. Well, Jeannie is an all-star listener, and she did. She reached out, and as a result, now we have this amazing new friendship, and she's here today. So I'm going to remind you at the beginning of this podcast, because I know a lot of people jump off at the end of podcast, to reach out. Consider saying hello. It's easy to get my email on my website, and I'd love to hear from you. Also, I'm going to put this at the beginning of the episode, is I would really appreciate if you would just take, let's say it would take 2 minutes. Do it right now. Take a second to rate and review the podcast to help other people find it. It would mean the world to me, and let me know that you do that so I can personally thank you. The episode today, I think it's going to be called something along the lines of recreating your belonging. Because ultimately, that's what I see in the story that Jeannie has shared with us today. And I think what you'll get from this episode is I think that you'll get so connected to the realness and the journey, and you'll feel so normal in hearing the struggles that Jeannie talks about, but you'll also be inspired. I know that that was the experience I had in the conversation with Jeannie. We talked just a little bit about self-care, and I'm going to give you in this episode, what you're going to get is you're going to learn the real reason behind why you don't practice self-care, and even worse, why you don't even want to practice self-care. That's going to be in this episode for you. And then she just shared some amazing examples of what has really, for her, been the thing that has turned her experience around about being the mom that she is with the challenges that she has. So we'll get right to it. We'll get into the episode. I know you're going to enjoy it. Can't wait to hear from you. Welcome, Jeannie Schnur, to our show. I am so excited to have this conversation in real life. For those of you that are new to the podcast, early on, I said, hey, reach out. Let me know what you think about the show. I'd love to hear from you. And Jeannie reached out. And as a result, we have created a friendship. And it has been so rewarding to me, so life-giving, that I have this new friend from across the country, and I have gotten to learn about her life. And I don't know, just for me, it's been so fun. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Definitely. Well, let's let everybody into your story. And if you will, just share with me a little bit about your life and what has you call yourself a mom of a special needs child.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, my husband is Carl, and we've been married for 13 years. And then our oldest is Jackson. He is 11. And then Tenley is our middle child, our daughter. She is 9.5. And then we have Bennett, who is 5.5. And why I'm a special needs mom is because Jackson has a seizure disorder called Lennox-Gastaut Syndrome, LGS for short.
And I think it's what I know about your story is that your Jackson was 14 months at the time of his diagnosis, and you happened to be 37 weeks pregnant at that time. Talk to us about
a crazy time. Looking back on it, if we had known what we were about to get into with Jackson's journey, we would not have gotten pregnant on purpose. But, God has a funny way of doing things. And I believe that he had us have this baby who is Tenley, and she was 16 months. So Jackson and Tenley are 16 months apart. And she was just that rainbow when we were in a really, really dark time. But yeah, I was in the hospital with Jackson getting the full workup, inpatient stay for a couple days, actually over my birthday.
And happy birthday.
Yeah, really. I'm like, and looking back, there's so many things I would love to change about that time. And, we can't change it, but we can help other people that are going through it. And so that's part of our story, is just helping newly diagnosed families navigate what it's like when you get a life-changing diagnosis.
Definitely. And I want to do a little bit of a then and now. And so tell us a little bit about those early days. What were the toughest moments that you can remember? Like, what comes to your mind about the toughest moments in the early days?
A lot of it was, when is the next seizure coming? So, first time mom, I have been around kids my whole life. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. So I felt pretty comfortable being around kids. But then when you have your own, and then they start doing a behavior or something that you think, oh, this is not right. That was tough. And that was tough to then catch him doing those behaviors, to show my husband and then be like, hey, this really isn't good. And so it took a couple weeks, maybe even a month, before we were both on board with, yeah, these movements that we're seeing are not typical newborn, or he wasn't a newborn, he was 1. They're not typical. And so then, from there, the seizures over time started changing. And as he became a toddler, they started to become drop seizures. So when they first were just like spasms where his arms are going up, and he was kind of just stiff for a lot of time, like hundreds of times a day, to then just playing at the table and then falling over and just hitting his face or hitting his mouth. And So early on, it was just so scary. Like, when is the next one going to come and what's going to happen? And then I had this little baby, Tenley, who I'm also trying to take care of. And it was just, we didn't go very many places. Our safe place was our house. And so I think just navigating what to do next and trying to know what treatment and all these things are coming at you. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like just trying to wrap your head around your perfectly healthy baby from a couple months ago to all of a sudden being on the opposite end of the spectrum was just really, really difficult.
Yeah, it's like I think you are dealing with both the immediate needs of like supporting his needs and of course the needs of you as you were prior to giving birth and then after giving birth, a newborn baby. So you're like doing the immediate now, but you're probably also processing the life that you're now not going to have as a result of this diagnosis.
Exactly.
And I imagine holding all that in those early days. Wow. Right. I mean, and I think a lot of moms are going to relate to you. Like in the early days of diagnosis, it's like all hands on deck to just survive because you're processing and doing so much.
Right. And I still wanted to have that social community of friends that I was, associating with before. Jackson was born around the time we had like, I don't know, 3 to 4 other friends that all had kids born the same age as him. So we were still trying to do play dates, but very quickly it became evident that Jackson was, severely delayed as all the other kids, were moving on and hitting milestones. And so that became hard. Like where friends' conversations started changing to, school things or just different things that they were able to do, whether it was sports or different activities. And we were still not doing any of that, just with therapies and just, all the doctor's appointments and medicine and just like, we couldn't even relate. I remember thinking sometimes just like, I can't even like be in this conversation. And that's really difficult.
Yeah, we talked about this offline before about how, because I think we were talking about the episode I did with Ashley and how I was laughing, and actually that someone helps me with my podcast was laughing because she said, had you talked to her before? And I was like, no, never. Like literally we just got on the Zoom conversation and we went and we went hard. And it was so like for us, we're like, oh yeah, we got this. Like we basically like have this foundation of connection because we have these children that are extraordinary and have asked extraordinary things of us. And so I feel like we just related a whole new level. And it's interesting, even as I'm talking now, because as you were talking, I was thinking, wow, like that must have been, it's like almost like the experience of you being on a road and all your friends and community and the expectations you had for your life is like veering off to the right. And then you're veering off to the left.
Yep.
And, the gap is small at first, but it's getting wider and wider and wider. And your friends aren't coming with you, and friends are imperfect beings and they don't always know how to support us. We don't even know what we need ourselves sometimes, right? So I was thinking, okay, yeah, there's this experience that you have of all of a sudden not belonging to what you once felt was your place. And now it's like I feel like we're creating this belonging. And that's one of the things that my podcast, one of my objectives is to create a place where you feel like you belong in these conversations. And so it's just kind of fun to kind of connect the dots there. So those were some tough moments, I imagine. And so fast forward to now. Now he's 11. So this is what, like almost 10 years later.
Yep.
What do you feel like your toughest moments are now as you navigate your journey?
Well, now we have 3 children. So let me say, Jackson is in early puberty. So that is a huge thing for us. He's very tall. I'm not very tall to begin with. I'm only 4'11". But yeah, so he has passed me and he's going to just continue growing. And so one of the really difficult things is just managing his weight and how strong he is. And I even said to my husband today, like, it's really tough. Like, I can't defend him with one arm anymore. Like, he can sometimes come at me and he doesn't mean to. He does not have like an on purpose mean bone in his body. He is so affectionate. And anyone that meets him knows that right away because he just will hug and smile and he loves to give kisses. But that's difficult, is to manage just the pure size of him. And then like, how do we move him around? Like if he falls asleep in our basement, we have a 3-level house. How do we get him upstairs 2 flights of stairs. Like, I mean, I could do it, but I'd really be hurting.
Yeah, I'm sure you could if your life depended on it, but I can imagine that that's not sustainable every day to like do it that way.
Right.
And I can relate to you because my son that has special needs is 11, but he outweighs me by about 20 pounds now. It is one of those things where when he's stronger than I am in a lot of ways, like he's not quicker than I am yet, but it definitely, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, when this child is 200 pounds and towering over me, huh, it's going to be interesting because I wouldn't say he has a mean bone in his body, but he has a lot of outbursting bones in his body where there's a lot of behaviors that are not consistent with who he is. And
Yeah.
so it is interesting. What supports are there out there for someone like you that has a physical need of parenting support? Do you feel like there is support out there for you?
I would say there is, but you need to know where to look for it. And that's one of my other big things, is being able to help people find that information, because it's just not like readily out there. Like, going back to when we were first diagnosed, like we were never handed like a folder with like, this is what you do next, and then you know, apply for Medicaid, and then you do this, and then you do this. It was just like a 1-page internet handout on infantile spasms, and that was it. Not even anything like documenting the treatment that they were suggesting. So that type of support, though, I did find when I got connected with the LGS Foundation, and you know, same for like the Autism Foundation or anything else that has some type of network along with them. They can provide that support, or at least they can tell you where to go. And so when I was first looking for some type of book that I could read to Tenley, to kind of explain to her, this is what your brother has, and this is why he does the things that he does, and also to explain them to his and her peers. And so I went to the foundation, and they sent me this comic book that they had. It was still like for like middle school though, and she at the time was just a little toddler. So I was like, well, she's not going to understand this. So things have evolved since then, and now we have a whole series of comic books for epilepsy. I think there's 5 in the series. This great organization called MediKids came out with these books. And so down the line, we got involved with them, and we're able to tell our story through the comic book. And that has been such a big help for other kids, for our family. But as far as support, when we did get connected with the foundation, we got connected with other parents, and that was key.
Yeah, like it's like it tapped you into additional resources that it's like this underground, because I know for myself, there's a Facebook group for parents that have children with panhypopituitarism, which is a small, it's not a lot of people have this, right? But it's like, there's like such a wealth of information, and it's so amazing to, when you have a question that you know is related to this diagnosis, that you can go to this like army force of moms and dads.
Yes.
That all just want to help each other because we all get it. So that's awesome. And of course, we'll link to the MediKids so that I had never heard of that resource. And, you know, it's all about education and really expanding our minds as to what different human beings, what kind of bodies different human beings have, and capacities different human beings have. So switching gears a little bit, you had, we brought up the conversation about how a lot of people will tell you, I don't know how you do it. Or a nice conversation that people from the church community like to say is, well, God only gives you what you can handle. And actually the last interview with Leah, she kind of brought up how, I loved how she said it. She's like, that conversation didn't really work for me.
Well, yeah.
And I really love the way that she said it. And so I would love to hear kind of your experience with that. What comes up for you when people say that, and how do you respond?
I first think, wow, you do not know what's going on in my head, or like what all I'm juggling, like to make it look like I have it all worked out. But what I have learned to say is that God does give you more than you can handle, so that you have to rely on Him to be able to walk with this very challenging thing, because I am not special. Like, I didn't have any training in this. I mean, I worked with kids with disabilities prior to starting my own family, but I specifically remember going home one night because it was tough. And I remember telling myself, like, I will never have a child with special needs. Like, I could never do that. And those words came back to me so strongly, you know, in the early years with Jackson. I could hear it crystal clear. And it's just a thing that draws you closer because you can't do it on your own. And so there's nothing special about what I do. It's, you know, Jackson is amazing. And the things that he's gone through, he has taught me so many lessons on strength and resilience. And those are the same things that I try to teach my kids and anyone that we come in contact with. Like, you know what, whatever you're dealing with, you can do it. You know, you can do it with the help of your family and your friends. And so, yeah, I don't feel like I have it all together. I have it all figured out.
Oh, I love what you said in the beginning about how, like, wow, how have I got you fooled to think that I've got this handled? That is just so funny. And I can relate to that so much as well. And I really love kind of just your acknowledgement that you don't have it handled and that he does, you know, it's not like, because I feel like there's this I think what a lot of people are trying to do when they say, well, God will only give you as much as you can handle, is they're trying to make you feel better. I experience this as well. When you see somebody in a situation that's unchanging and looks hard, you as a human want to help. You want to change their circumstance. And unfortunately, this is not or I mean, maybe fortunately, actually, because of all the things we get to learn from these kids, it's not changing. It's not going away. And a lot of it is going to be hard. A lot of it's going to be beautiful. So we have to remember that part too. But people see that and they're really uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable for being uncomfortable with you. And so they try to make it better by saying something that hopefully will make you feel better. In which case it does not. I know that I can relate in the same way. Like, it doesn't make me feel better. But I think it is important to remember that last piece that you said is like, you're right. Like, I can't handle this on my own. I actually need someone bigger and way stronger than myself to be your guide. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sure. I think sometimes people too, it's hard to be in an uncomfortable space. Like, we don't naturally like that. So, and sometimes that's really all you can do. Sometimes I just need that friend to just sit with me in that moment. They don't have to say anything. They can just say, gosh, I'm really sorry you're going through that right now. Like, I wish it was different, or something like that, without like the catchy phrase or something. Just like sitting there with you and being there with you and feeling it with you without trying to just like say something and move on to the next conversation.
Definitely. So you're aware you need this sometimes, and I'm sure sometimes your friends do a better job than others at holding that space for you. Do you ever actively ask for that? Like, hey, I just need you to listen and to kind of feel the pain with me?
Definitely. I have some very close friends that I can do that with that don't have kids with special needs. So they may not, you know, completely understand it, but they know me well enough and they know Jackson and they know how hard it is. And then I have those parents that I've met that have, you know, children with disabilities, and they totally get it. And we're that person for each other. And I think that's really important to find those people.
So important. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I think a lot of us subconsciously just expect our friends to be able to do that for us. And we forget to realize, or we forget to recognize that just like we don't know how to be a parent to a special needs child, they don't know how to be a friend to a parent of a special needs child. Yep. And so just like we're giving ourselves the grace to learn and to mess up and to not know how, we can extend the same to our friends. And if we recognize what we need, we can actually ask for it. We can actually say, hey, I just need you to listen right now. So I'm glad that you have those people. Another thing we talked about was the power of positive attitude. And of course, in the lens that this can be helpful. So actually I want to again, look at this in two, like at both sides. I want to hear what for you, is helpful when it comes to a positive attitude.
So, I mean, on any given day, there's bound to be something that I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, I cannot believe this is happening. Like, And it would be very easy to succumb to those circumstances and just be like, I'm done. Like, I just want to lay on the couch today and just like the whole world is evil and I just can't do it. Like
the whole world is evil.
Yeah. I mean, we need some more kindness here. But Leah, I think, also mentioned it. I think she said something about how it would be the same thing. Like, it would be easy for her to sit on the couch, but she has, children watching her and other responsibilities, and we just can't let all that stuff fall to the wayside. So when I start to get into that mindset of like everything is terrible, I have to do something to like pick myself up. So whether that's, music, upbeat music, whatever kind of music, just something to just like get me out of that funk, whether it's stepping outside and just being in the beautiful outdoors for a few minutes, just a deep breath, or a scream or a yell or whatever, just something to just acknowledge it's really difficult, but that I'm not going to stay here. And I think we've talked about that pity place before, where some days are just really hard and you have to let yourself feel those feelings. And then you have to be able to pick it all up and, keep going. And my kids that are around me all the time, I have to set a good example for them. They're watching every little thing I do. They're watching how I react, and I'm teaching them how to persevere. They're bound to experience hard times too. And I want their mom to be a good example. So that's kind of in the back of my head too.
Yeah. Well, so when I talk about like looking at both sides of positivity or positive thinking, it's looking at how powerful what you've just described is, like actually being able to generate connection to what is good on purpose. Like for you, taking that breath, going outside, listening to music, like doing those things so that you can generate in that moment. But what I think is really important that you mentioned is that it's not in an effort to avoid the feeling bad. It's actually acknowledging that you a lot of times feel bad. And a conversation that Jeannie and I had earlier was she just mentioned she was saying it was a really hard day, and she just had a really bad, she kind of sank all the way into her pity and kind of did what I might call like is like a thought vomit, or just like let it all go as far as like, this sucks, this is so hard, just really leaning all into the thoughts that come up when you don't filter yourself, which I think is really important. And just to kind of be there and to not have it mean anything, and just actually go to the place of all the stories you have and just letting it be and not resisting that. And then the way that Jeannie described it was like, okay, now I'm done with that. I'm going to go move on. And so I just think you did such a great job really showing in real life, like what that really looks like is to go all the way into the feelings of feeling the hard and this, the fears that come up with parenting children that don't have lives that we can easily predict.
Yeah.
And so really beautiful job with that. And so what I was going to mention is that a lot of times, so there's something called toxic positivity. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And it's like, and I see this actually quite a lot as I'm working with coaching clients. It's like the inability, or it's like almost like I can't acknowledge the negative thoughts and feelings because I'll get stuck there. I just have to do positive. Of course, it doesn't work. And then it's like, and it's toxic because it really does trap you.
I was going to say, yeah. And eventually it all has to come out.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that too. And it does. And so then moms are like, oh my gosh, why did I like unleash terror, like in yelling at my child? And it's, or why did I go eat a whole thing of Oreos? Or why did I not sleep at night, or whatever the thing is?
Yeah.
It's going to be different for everybody. And it's like, well, let's check in on how you're actually processing your emotions and allowing them to be.
Yep. Yeah, that's right on. And I think earlier on in our journey, I don't think we were really, I think it was, denial and all those stages of grief, So we weren't really acknowledging feelings. We were trying to just be like, everything's great. Everything's great. Everything's great. And then it'd be like 6 months later and like more seizures and more medicine and just more unknown. And it was like, after a while, it was like, we almost went the opposite way. And I was just like, you really want to know how I feel? And then it was like just all these bad things. And I remember a time, probably like 3 years in, maybe 3 or 4, where it was just like kind of dark again. And it was just like, everything is so hard. And, and then eventually I came out of that, but you do have
It's almost like you were fueling yourself on the like non-sustainable energy of forced positive thoughts. And through that, like almost like re-breakdown in that 3rd or 4th year where you're like, this is not sustainable. I can't keep doing this. That breakdown is actually what created the breakthrough of creating, it sounds like just a balanced experience
Yes.
of your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful example. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
And I am definitely nowhere arrived or perfect. It's like, no matter how hard you try to, set your mind to something or whatever, you're going to fall short because we're not perfect, but I really do try.
Yeah. And I think I'm glad you mentioned that because I mean, I still struggle with this that, I'm a coach, so I should like totally figure this stuff out. And that's not the point. And as we continue to up level as humans, we're always going to reach our ceiling of where we haven't gone past yet. And we're going to be bad at it and we're going to struggle and we're going to hit up against resistance. And that's totally normal and expected.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of times I'm like, oh, something's wrong. I'm not doing this right. If that's happening. But learning to recognize that actually is like, it's like the breadcrumbs that you're doing it right, that everything's exactly as it should be. It's perfect. And so I don't know, it's allowing it to be perfect as it is for me really helps me stay in those moments that are really uncomfortable. Because I'm not doubly like trying to freak out about like how I'm not doing it right while I'm trying to process the emotion of that's right before me. So thanks for putting that in there as well. So something I think special needs moms are just more acutely aware of is their lack of control over what happens with their child. I think especially with the diagnosis that your son has, that his, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is that his seizures are not controlled. Like there's not an effective protocol for him. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. Part of LGS is that it's resistant to medication. So, I mean, any kid that has LGS has tried, everything, the whole gamut of things, where it's medications, diets, therapies, surgeries, and what works for one child may not work for another. And that's really difficult because all you want to do is like find that special, combination. And I see it all the time on like our private Facebook groups. So people will be like, have you tried this medication? You just want that success story, especially as you're trying something new. And I mean, I've learned to recognize, like, even if I hear like 10 people say this was it for them, it might not be it for me. Mm-hmm. And so that can be difficult.
Yeah. So nobody really has control. I know that. And I think you probably know that. And probably most everyone listening knows that. But sometimes we forget and we think we have control. And I think that's why the coronavirus was so upsetting, is that we thought we knew what was going to happen in the world, but we actually didn't. Yeah. And we thought we had it like handled and we didn't. Talk to us a little bit about how you handle not like knowing that you don't have control and kind of like being flexible and adaptive and really as the leader of your family, or as a leader of your family along with your husband, how you lead your family in the area of being flexible and adaptable.
That's a good question. So we have kind of always taken the stance of we never know what a day holds for us. So it's kind of hard to, like, when people ask the question, what do you see for yourself in 5 years? Sometimes I'm like, in order to maintain my sanity, I just have to focus on like today and this and what's next. So just learning all of Jackson's things, with him, one day can be a great day and the next day completely opposite. And even if he gets a full night of sleep, we could expect he's going to have a great day and then he doesn't. And so those type of things, when you're relying on that control of how things are going to work and then they don't, can really throw you off. So when when the coronavirus started, we were actually getting our second service dog for Jackson, and we were in Ohio. Our 2 other kids were in Pennsylvania with our family. So we were like in this bubble as things were just unraveling in the world. And it was just so weird. And then it didn't really hit us that like we were in a pandemic until we got back to Virginia. So we were in Ohio for 2 weeks training, and we brought Hoop-Dee-Doo back home. And then it was like everything was shut down, and we were home with Jackson full time. And it was just like a whole new hard that we hadn't experienced in a while. And we had to figure out, how are we going to make this work? But it was actually a really special time to have our family all together and to be able to just do things together as a family. You know, we weren't going anywhere. We were only able to take walks and just go around. But Carl and I are on the same page of just not letting our circumstances control us. And I don't know, we just rolled with it. Like, it was nice kind of not to have anything else pulling us away and just focusing on our family and just quality time together.
Yeah. And it's so cool you have a service dog. I want to hear more about that later. But in non-corona times, so you mentioned that, every day can bring unexpected, like you can't ever predict when you're going to be dealing with seizures.
Yeah.
Or whatever else comes up. So how do you go about, for you, what works for you? Do you plan your day kind of saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do unless we have a seizure, and then I'm going to do that? Like, how do you go about planning your life?
I have a loose schedule, and by loose, I mean, like, I know these are the things we're going to do today, but I really counted on those respite breaks that I call them of when Jackson went to school, because I knew at least when he would go to school, I could do the things like I homeschool. So I would have plenty of time to focus one-on-one with my 2 other children. And if I need to do any errands, I could do that. So then when Jackson all of a sudden wasn't at school, it was like, whoa, now how do we get things done? So I'm not a regimented person by any means. I'm more flexible. So then I think it makes it easier when things come up.
But it sounds like you're also still getting stuff done. And again, like non-corona times or corona times and non-corona times are so different in your case, especially because of Jackson either being at school, not being at school. It sounds like, though, you have a way of still getting your life done in the sense of like schooling your children, keeping yourself alive and all that kind of stuff. So it seems like you have a system that's working for you. And it just sounds like that you have a way of not attaching yourself to having to have a real, like, must get this done experience about it for you to be able to kind of navigate the unpredictability that, is there.
Yeah, I would say I probably like each day put, here's a couple things I'd like to get done today, and if those get done, great. I mean, if they don't, they don't. But I have an idea at least. And then, if something comes up, something comes up. But I like the flexibility of just being able to, if someone stops over, it's not going to throw my whole day off because I've scheduled every single hour, to do something. But I don't really know if it's like a specific thing.
I think so. What I see is a lot of people actually would say, I can't schedule anything because I don't know what's going to happen. And they would get really hung up on that and then not plan to do anything. It sounds like you have a way of saying, I'm going to do these things tomorrow. And if we're dealing with something else, I'll do that. That you just know that that's just a part of your life. And it's going to be that you've designed a way for your brain to wrap around both holding your commitments in your space and in your, like, as a commitment, and making sure that Jackson has the care that he needs.
Yeah, that's right.
So switching gears a little bit, actually, we mentioned the idea of keeping yourself alive and not just alive. Let's go for better than alive. So I wanted just to touch on self-care. I was curious to hear a little bit about what your relationship to self-care is.
Self-care, my favorite word. No, I really
For reals, or are you being sarcastic?
I do like it, but sometimes I feel like there's a delicate balance between like indulging on the selfish side and then like really taking care of yourself, like in a true way. Like, I know that I play the piano, I like sports, I like pampering, I like being competitive and playing games. So those type of things all fill me up. But like, I also like sitting on the couch, but that's not really helping me as much as doing some other things that like provide the creative juices inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely important. I'm not the best at carving out time for it. A lot of times I'll be like, I'm just too tired to do anything. And then I'm like, wait, I have the time. Why don't I go do my nails? Like, just paint my nails. Like, that would be, I like to look down and see my nails painted. Or, the other night I was like, Carl, I want you to do something with me. And he was working on something. And then I was like, well, I can go do something that I like to do. And I went and played the piano for an hour. And I was so happy I did. And then he ended up bringing his guitar in and we played together. And that's something we used to love doing together.
So
and we
cool.
don't really have the time very much. We don't make the time, I should say.
Well, yeah. And there's this, like how you correct yourself. Oh, we don't make the time. And so I think it's so important not to go beat ourselves up for not doing it perfectly. But I do think that I think it's hard through the lenses that we have as moms to distinguish between what's indulgent and selfish and what's self-care. And I mean, for anybody that listened to my episode on self-care, self-care that doesn't suck is what I called it. You can listen to more to that conversation. But I guess I was just curious to hear you, what your current relationship is. And it sounds like you have a lot of things that that energize you. And I'd be curious to hear what you would say, what for you feels indulgent or selfish about self-care.
I would say, well, maybe not so much selfish, because sometimes I'm like, well, I hate leaving my kids sometimes, but I know it's good. Mm-hmm. And even like tonight, Bennett was like, why do you have to go on a call? You go on a call every night. And I'm like, I don't go on calls every night. Like, I do a mom's group one night a week. But like the way that they see it is completely different. I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like, I think I also feel like sometimes moms don't want to do it and recognize that it is important.
And why don't they want to do it?
Oh, I feel like they feel guilty for taking time for themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't feel guilt. I don't think I feel guilty. Like I went to a medical appointment the other day and I was like, it was just so nice to have quiet for like 2 hours. I was like, and I'm not even doing anything, but just having quiet. And I realized like how I really haven't had that lately. And that's just so important. And it just goes to show it doesn't have to be something fancy. It could just be quiet time in the car where I could actually hear myself think. So I don't know.
Well, you brought up something really interesting. Okay, so a lot of times moms don't want to do it. And I think you hit on something really important. They don't want to do it because whatever they attempt to do in service of self-care produces feelings of guilt because of the current relationship to self-care. Mm-hmm. So it's like they're going to try to do something, we'll just say good, and they produce a result of guilty feelings. And so it actually feels worse than not doing it at all.
Yeah.
So then one would say, well, then you see the learned pattern of like, I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel guilty. And then I think what happens is people mistake that the reason they feel guilty is because, let's just say, getting on a call. They feel guilty because they're getting on a call. But what we don't realize is they actually feel guilty because of the relationship they have to spending time with themselves or just what they believe, like these subconscious beliefs about how much time one should spend with their kids, right? And it's like, you should put your kids to bed 7 nights a week, never miss it. It's like the unconscious story or narrative that's running the show. And then when you stop to think, like, it sounds like, tonight was like, no, actually, like, I'm very present, like you actually can kind of realize, no, I'm very present. And I know I definitely deal with mom guilt. I don't really know a lot of moms that don't at all. For me, it's just helpful to kind of notice when that comes up and to recognize the story that's producing that guilt and choosing from a higher commitment than just trying to avoid guilt.
Yeah. And actually, I think it struck a chord with me because I think that sometimes I probably feel those feelings when I'm like, I'm trying to balance all these things and I'm like, I can't let go of this one over here because this one's going to fall if I leave or, but my husband doesn't put that on me. He has never once made me feel guilty. It is just what I put on myself. And when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, it's more myself, like what I put on myself.
Totally. And I mean, yeah, it's like same. I had a mom that modeled just servant of servant, and she just would do anything for her kids. And it was so beautiful. And I am so thankful for who she is as my mom. And I recognized that I created a subconscious story because my mom didn't, for the most part, work outside the home. So I had a very different model of what a mom looked like than what I am as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like I'm finding that I'm having to really rewrite the story of what it looks like to be a fully present mom, because that's really what I'm after. And then also, like, what does that look like when it actually comes to me saying, okay, I'm going to go away for the girls' weekends or not, because of aligning it with my highest commitment of who I am and also my relationship to my kids. So thanks for having a honest conversation about that. I know it's hard sometimes to like out ourselves on what's really happening for us.
Yeah, this is real. This is #real life.
Hashtag for realsies. Well, I want to hear a little bit. I know that I've learned that part of your transformation in kind of really being able to live this life well with a child that has the needs that your son has been heavily influenced by you becoming an advocate and really getting involved with support systems and groups. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about what drew you to that and how you feel like it helps you and of course helps people that you're supporting.
So I think along the way, at some point, I realized that I wanted to help others through my story. And when you help others, you take your eyes off yourself and you're looking at them. And so it makes whatever you're going through seem smaller. And that's what I try to do in our day-to-day life. We try to help other people as much as possible. And so when I started to realize that we could use this thing that's happened to us for good, I was like, I got to find out how to do this. And so getting involved with the LGS Foundation was the first point of us taking that step. And along the way, we attended conferences. They have conferences every 18 months, and they were in person up until this year. But it was so special to be able to go to these conferences and meet other family members and just be able to be with people who completely get it. And that shaped, when you're around people doing the same thing as you, fighting the same fight, it's like iron sharpens iron. You go back energized. You know that your friend across the country is doing the same thing you are, and it's an encouragement. So I wanted to be able to help other people with our story and sharing our story. And so as we were doing walks and different things to raise funds and awareness, we got that opportunity to be part of the MediKids comic book. And from there, just other opportunities started creeping up where we could share our story. We just always wanted to help people so they didn't have to go through those hard things that we did. And if we could spare them from some of that heartache, that's what we wanted to do. And it's never comfortable. I still probably cry every time I stand up in front of a crowd and try to say something about Jackson or any of our special kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like my heart's in it. And so recently we've been trying, like as Jackson's at a new school, we try to go there and talk about his seizure disorder because most people have never heard of it. Whenever you mention a seizure, most people think, oh, you just take medication for that and it's controlled. But that's not the case with this type of seizure disorder. It's a rare disorder. And so we like to help people understand it. And so at his new school, and none of my ideas are original. I get these ideas from meeting other parents. One of the ideas was to do a disability simulation. And so we go there and we read, there's some different epilepsy books. And my one really good friend, Andy, wrote a book about seizures and how friends at school can help. And it's the greatest book. It's called Sometimes They Get the Wiggles.
That's amazing.
It's so great because kids can understand it and they have tangible things that they can do when they see, a child have a seizure. And so I get up there and we read the book and we show a little video of life at our house and just try to make it so like they can see like Jackson outside of the school environment and what other kids with disabilities, like they're just kids, yeah, they have this special part to them, but they're just living their life too. And they do things just like you and I do. And so we just try to like take away that stigma of just like being scared or, different things that people say about seizures. And when we get into the simulation part, that's kind of like simulating different disabilities. So kids can try to, see what it's like to have, a fine motor delay, like where we make them wear gloves and then try to button a shirt, or we have them put a ball between their legs and try to walk. And that could be like a gross motor, problem. Or there's just a couple things that we run kids through. And we also just show pictures of Jackson, and just, we have had so much, I don't know if you would call it success, or just people just love it. They love to see, like, it's not some scary thing. I mean, it is scary, but just letting them into a piece of our life, that has given us so much power to go out and keep doing things like that. And so with Epilepsy Awareness Month coming up in November, and LGS Awareness Day is November 1st, we're getting ready to do a whole bunch of different things and just trying to educate and make people more aware.
That's amazing. And I think I alluded to this in my question, but I think that you stepping into this role, it's a win-win. It probably has helped you as much as it has helped the people that you seek to help. And I know that's for me, like, why I'm in this work. And I think I've shared in other episodes, like, that I had, for me early on in the journey, I was like, I am, like, my calling is to use this to help other people. Mm-hmm. I think there's something about having the experiences, the really hard experiences that we've had, to help us see the gifts that we have to share with the world. I believe that every human being has gifts that God's given them to be a light in the world. And they all look different. Clearly, Jackson's are different than yours. And but you guys both can, he is clearly, I mean, my guess, my assumption is that he has clearly helped magnify yours, or maybe not magnify, but illuminate is what I'm looking for. And I know that's the case for all of my kids, but especially my Levi. And anyhow, as an advocate, I really love this. What do you call it? You call it an ability. What do you call the
disability simulation?
Disability simulation. I've never heard of anything like that. And I am so like fluttering with energy around, wow, what an amazing idea. Yeah. Because, as you were sharing, I'm thinking, yes, like, the way human beings work is we think different, bad. And our brains are just wired to be attracted to what we know and predict. Mm-hmm. And when we can't predict something because we're unfamiliar with it, we assume it is not a good idea. And that is just how our biology is wired. We can apply that to meeting people with disabilities, and we can apply that to, like, getting a new job. It's all the same. And I love that it's bringing the conversation into school about, it's like taking the mystery out of whatever difference a child has. Because my son has he has a modified gait. So because he has hemiplegia, when he walks, he has an obvious difference on how his physical body moves as a completely able-bodied person. People have a lot of stories of what that means. And they make a lot of assumptions about his intellectual capacity because of his physical body. Mm-hmm. And I know that I hear that over and over again. So I think to open up the conversation with other kids, and let's just be honest, other adults, about what it's like to have these different needs, and really kind of like focus on the person behind the difference. And I don't know, I love it. So how, what's the first step you take in creating those experiences?
You mean like with the school, or?
Yeah. Like, how do you go about doing that?
So anywhere we go, we like to tell them, like, this is Jackson. Like, at school, we always do a presentation at the beginning of the year. This is Jackson. Like, no matter what, the school is going to train the way they train, but we're the best, advocates for Jackson. We know him best. So we always do our own PowerPoint, which, again, not my idea. I got it from another mom of an LGS child. But it's all about Jackson, all the things that you wouldn't know by just going up to him, because Jackson from the outside looks like nothing's wrong until he starts making noises or, doing any of his behaviors. So we like to set the groundwork, with, this is Jackson, this is his likes, dislikes, this is what's important for Jackson. We do like a 1-page profile, and anyone that works with Jackson gets that page. And then from there, we just build a relationship, because let's be honest, seizures can be scary. And the fact that they can come anytime, the teachers want to be comfortable. So they're so thankful that we take the time and show seizure videos of Jackson, and show, whatever else, what home life is like. just to make them more comfortable. So once we do that and we establish that foundation, then they're more willing to, do more things within the school. And his school in particular is really good with inclusion and having him involved in the rest of the school. He's by no means like, in a room by himself.
Mm-hmm.
When I go to that school, like more people know him than I know them. Like, I'm like, how do you know Jackson? Like everybody knows Jackson, which makes a mom's heart feel so good. And so, we always just tell people like, hey, November is, this is what we do in November. And they started to say, hey, could we do something? Could we put something on the announcements? And then from the announcements, it went to, well, Jackson was a new student. They played like they put together a slideshow for the school and played that for them and said, this is Jackson. Jackson has 2 service dogs. And just to get the kids knowing who he was. And, all schools are not like that, unfortunately. But just building that relationship and being willing to be an educator and, an advocate is so important.
Well, I think I know I've benefited from kind of just learning what you've done and some of the ideas I've heard a little bit, or I've seen other moms do a couple of things at school. And of course, we've done a couple different things. But thank you for just putting that concept out there so that all us other moms can be inspired by that. And of course, we will give, actually, why don't we let everybody know how they can reach you if they do have specific questions about anything. I think you're pretty open to sharing and wanting to help anybody. So how can people reach you if they'd like to follow up with you?
Sure, they can email me. My email address is jeannieschnur@gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram, kind of a short name, but it's JENESNR. And Jackson also has his own page on Instagram, which is Action for Jackson, FOR.
I saw that today. I didn't know about that before. I was like, I love it.
Yeah, so we try to keep everything with him, on his page. And we do have a Facebook page too for Jackson. It's also Action for Jackson. So any of those.
I love that. And as we wrap up, I just want to say I've so thoroughly enjoyed the conversation and the relationship that we've built. And is there anything that you'd like to share as we close up?
I would just say for anyone that maybe doesn't feel they have the support like we do, it's out there and you can find it, but you have to take the steps to do it. So whether that's just finding a Facebook forum or like a foundation or something like that, most foundations do have like forums for parents. Just take the step to put yourself out there and make that connection, because we didn't do that for a little while and we didn't know anybody and it felt very isolating. And that's something I didn't talk about. But being a special needs mom can be very isolating. But once you find those couple people that you can count on, the sky's the limit for impacting and changing the view of disability. So I would just encourage that.
Definitely. And I'll just put in the note that like all groups are not created equal, in the sense that some groups are not going to be as life-giving as others for you.
Right.
They might be for other people, but you and I have talked about this, that some groups are kind of just talking about maybe all the negative things that are happening, and almost they can even magnify the challenges. Like it may actually make you feel worse. Right. And so really it's just like kind of trying stuff out and seeing what creates support for you and what actually is helping to generate you and what you need at the time. And it might be different. It might be different times, different seasons. So, yeah. Thank you again. I am so thankful for our time. We will see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So there you have it. That's the end of our show for today. And I'm so glad you were with us. I have one quick favor to ask you. It is the request to subscribe and to share. And of course, please leave your feedback. I want to hear from you. I want to know more of what you want, more of what helped you, and of course, more of what touched you. See you next time. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.